In a world of giants, kings, and conquerors, what if I told you that one of the greatest reformers, a king who turned an entire nation back to God, was just a boy? Not a teenager, not a young adult, but an 8-year-old child. This isn't a fairy tale. It's the incredible true story of Josiah, the boy king of Judah. Our story begins in a kingdom shrouded in darkness. Judah had lost its way. The people had turned their backs on their faith, building altars to foreign gods and filling the land with practices that were a far cry from their ancestors' covenants. The air was thick with moral decay, a spiritual sickness that had been festering for generations. Josiah's own father, Amon, and his grandfather, Manasseh, were among the worst kings in Judah's history. They had actively promoted idol worship, even desecrating the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. It was into this broken world, this legacy of rebellion, that a boy named Josiah was born. Tragedy struck early and hard. When Josiah was just 8 years old, his father, King Amon, was assassinated by his own officials in a palace coup. Imagine the fear and confusion. The palace guards swiftly put down the rebellion and executed the conspirators, but the kingdom was left without a leader. In this moment of crisis, the people of the land did something extraordinary. They looked past the chaos and placed their hopes on the small shoulders of a child. They crowned 8-year-old Josiah as their new king. An 8-year-old on the throne. While other kids were learning to read and play games, Josiah was being handed the scepter of a nation in turmoil. What could a boy possibly do to fix a kingdom so deeply broken? For the first few years of his reign, he was likely guided by advisors, learning the ways of the court, observing the spiritual corruption that surrounded him. But something was stirring within this young king. A seed of righteousness, a desire for something more than the darkness he had inherited. The Bible tells us that in the 8th year of his reign, when Josiah was 16 years old, he began to seek the God of his ancestor David. This wasn't a political move or a public decree. It was a personal quest. At an age when most teenagers are wrestling with their own identity, Josiah was wrestling with the identity of his nation. He looked past the legacy of his immediate father and grandfather and reached back through the centuries to King David, a man after God's own heart. This personal awakening was the quiet beginning of a revolution. 4 years later, at the age of 20, Josiah's personal faith erupted into public action. He could no longer stand by and watch his kingdom crumble under the weight of idolatry. He launched a nationwide campaign of spiritual purification. He didn't just issue a command from his palace, he personally led the charge. He traveled throughout Judah and Jerusalem, tearing down the pagan altars, smashing the sacred poles dedicated to the goddess Asherah, and grinding the idols to dust. He defiled the high places where people had made their sacrifices, ensuring they could never be used again. His zeal was unstoppable. He even extended his reforms into the territories of the former northern kingdom of Israel, cleansing the land with a fierce determination that belied his youth. This was a radical, dangerous move. He was dismantling a system that had been in place for over 50 years, challenging the beliefs and practices of many powerful people. But Josiah was driven by a conviction that was stronger than any opposition. He was on a mission to restore his nation's soul. Then, in the 18th year of his reign, when Josiah was 26, something happened that would change everything. He decided it was time to restore the Lord's temple, the very heart of their faith, which had fallen into disrepair and desecration. He commissioned workers and gathered funds to repair the sacred building. It was during these renovations that the high priest, Hilkiah, made a discovery that would shake the kingdom to its core. Hidden away, forgotten in a dusty corner of the temple, was the book of the law. This was likely the book of Deuteronomy, the sacred text containing the laws and covenants given by God to their ancestors through Moses. For decades, perhaps even generations, this foundational document of their faith had been lost. When the scroll was brought before King Josiah and read aloud, the young king's reaction was immediate and profound. As he listened to the words, the blessings for obedience and the terrifying curses for disobedience, he understood the true extent of his nation's rebellion. He saw with horrifying clarity how far they had strayed. The scriptures weren't just ancient history, they were a living, breathing indictment of his people. In anguish, he tore his robes, a public sign of deep mourning and repentance. He didn't keep this revelation to himself. He knew the entire nation had to hear it. Josiah gathered all the people of Jerusalem, from the least to the greatest, at the temple. He stood before them and read the entire book of the law aloud. The words echoed through the courts, a powerful reminder of who they were meant to be. In that powerful moment, standing before his people and his God, King Josiah renewed the covenant. He pledged, with all his heart and all his soul, to follow the Lord, to obey his commands, statutes, and decrees. And the people, moved by their king's passionate faith, all joined him in the pledge. It was a national rebirth, a turning point led by a king who had first sought God in his youth. Josiah's reforms became even more fervent. He purged the last remnants of paganism from the temple and the land. And then, he did something that hadn't been done in generations. He reinstituted the Passover, the great festival celebrating God's deliverance of their ancestors from slavery in Egypt. It was celebrated with such precision and devotion that the Bible says no Passover like it had been kept since the days of the prophet Samuel. It was the crowning achievement of his spiritual renewal, a nationwide celebration of their restored relationship with God. Josiah's story is a powerful testament to the idea that age is no barrier to impact. He inherited a kingdom in spiritual ruin, a legacy of darkness, but through a personal quest for God that began in his teenage years, he found the courage and conviction to lead his people out of the shadows. He didn't have a perfect father or grandfather to look up to, but he looked further back, to the foundations of his faith, and chose a different path. His reign stands as a bright light in a dark period of Judah's history. It shows that one person, regardless of their age or the circumstances they're born into, can make a monumental difference. Josiah wasn't just a king. He was a reformer, a revivalist, and a powerful example of what can happen when a heart, young or old, truly turns toward God. His story reminds us that it's never too early or too late to seek truth and fight for what is right. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe for more incredible stories from the Bible.